In the village of Cana in Galilee, a wedding feast was underway. The courtyard was full, all laughing, eating, celebrating. It was a day of joy. Among the guests were Jesus and his disciples. But quietly, a problem was unfolding. The wine had run out. No announcement was made, no shout of alarm, but behind the scenes, worry began to spread. For a wedding in this culture, running out of wine was no small embarrassment. It was a deep shame for the family, a sign that they could not provide for their guests. Mary, the mother of Jesus, became aware of this situation. She saw the anxious whispers, the hurried glances, the empty jugs. Without making a scene, she went to her son. "My son, they have no more wine," she said. Jesus looked at her, hearing more than the words themselves, hearing the plea behind them.
"Mother, why do you involve me? My hour has not yet come."
His words were gentle but full of depth. He was not diminishing her, nor ignoring the problem. He was speaking something larger, the fullness of his mission, the time when he would reveal himself completely. Yet Mary did not argue. She did not insist, explain, or pressure. She simply trusted him. She turned away from Jesus and spoke to the servants nearby. "Do whatever he tells you." And with that, she left it in his hands. Near the palace where they stood, there were 6 large stone water jars used for ceremonial washing, each one big enough to hold many gallons. Jesus walked towards them, his steps unhurried, as the servants watched him with uncertainty and curiosity. Then he spoke.
"Fill the jars with water."
No explanation, no grand gesture, just a simple command. The servants obeyed. They went to the well and filled their buckets, and again they poured water into the stone jars. They worked until each jar was filled, not halfway, not almost, but up to the very brim. When the last jar was full, Jesus spoke again.
"Now, draw some out and take it to the master of the feast."
Somewhere between the drawing of the water and the tasting of it at the feast, something unseen took place. No thunder spilt the sky. No voice boomed through the clouds. No one saw light blaze from the jars, but the ordinary water was changed, transformed into wine. Not just any wine. Wine so good that when the master of the feast tasted it, he was astonished. The guests did not know what happened. They only knew that the celebration continued. The guests didn't know what happened. They only knew that the celebration continued and that the wine was excellent. But the servants knew where the wine had come from. They had watched Jesus, heard his words, seen the quiet authority with which he acted. This, in Cana of Galilee, was the first signs through which Jesus revealed his glory. He did not start with a spectacle in a palace, but with a quiet act of mercy at a village wedding, protecting his family from shame, blessing a moment of human joy, showing that the kingdom of God touches even the simplest celebrations of life. Through this sign, his disciples began to believe in him in a deeper way, seeing not only a teacher, but the one who could change what is ordinary into something extraordinary. And though only a few truly understood what had taken place, the feast went on. Music played, laughter rose, cups were filled with wine that had once been water, and with a faith that had only begun to grow. And so, in Cana, with a simple command and a hidden miracle, the story of his signs began.
"Abun di bashmaya, dathkadash shemak."
The hills around Galilee had begun to know his footsteps. Everywhere Jesus went, word spread. He healed the sick. He lifted the broken. He spoke like someone who knew the heart of God, not from a distance, but as a son. One day, as the sun rose bright over the lake, a great crowd followed him up a hillside. They came from all directions: farmers, mothers with children, fishermen, the poor, the curious, the desperate, the hopeful. Jesus climbed a little higher, found a place on a slope where all could see him, and sat down. His disciples drew near. The rest of the crowd leaned in, waiting. He looked at them, tired faces, hungry hearts, and opened his mouth to speak.
Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven.
The crowd shifted, some confused, others captivated. Blessed are the ones who know they have nothing? Blessed are the ones who feel empty?
Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those whose hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled.
He called blessed are those the world often call weak. He spoke of a kingdom where the overlooked were seen, where the broken were comforted, where the hungry, not just hungry for food, but hungry for what is right, would be satisfied. Then he turned his words from blessing to calling.
You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. A city is set on a hill, cannot be hidden. Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven.
On that hill, he was not just giving them spiritual sayings. He was inviting them into a new way of life, into a kingdom where they themselves became flavor and light for the world. The sermon went on about anger and reconciliation, about prayer and trust, about building a life on rock, not sand. When he finished, many left that hillside changed, carrying his words like seeds in their hearts. But the story did not end on that hill. Time passed. More signs, more healing, more teaching. Wherever he went, crowds followed him, because in his presence, something in them came alive. One day, Jesus crossed into the far side of the Sea of Galilee. He went up another hillside and sat down with his disciples. Yet again people came. They filled the slopes with great multitude. 5,000 men, not counting women and children. Many had walked far, carrying loved ones who needed healing, bringing nothing but their need and a faint hope that he could meet it. Jesus looked out over them, a sea of faces under the open sky.
They are like sheep without a shepherd.
He knew their sickness, he knew their fears, he knew their sins, but he also knew something simpler and immediate. They were hungry. He had spoken before of those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, who would be filled. Now, on this hillside, they also hungered in a much more ordinary way. Turning to his disciples, he asked a question.
Where shall we buy bread, that these may eat?
He knew exactly what he would do, but he asked them to draw their attention to the need. They looked at the crowd, and the crowd kept growing. Even if they had months of wage, it would not be enough. Among them, they found only a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 fish. So little in the face of so many, yet in the hands of Jesus, too little would become more than enough. Jesus did not panic. He did not send them away. He did not scold them for coming unprepared. He simply gave an instruction.
Make the people sit down.
There was much grass in that place. Groups formed across the hillside, families together, friends side by side, the sick supported by those who had brought them. The chatter died down. The crowd settled like a giant congregation, waiting. Jesus lifted his eyes, not to the crowd, but to heaven. Holding what little he had, he gave thanks.
Father.
No long speech, no dramatic display, just blessing and gratitude. Then he began to break the bread. He broke and gave, broke and gave, broke and gave to his disciples, who carried it to the people sitting on the grass. He did the same with the fish. Piece after piece, hand after hand, circle after circle on the hillside received bread and fish. The boy's small lunch became a feast, and still, it did not run out. Soon, the sound of hunger quieted. There were no more empty hands raised for food. Children ate until they were satisfied. The weary travelers leaned back, full. Even the skeptics chewed slowly, wondering, how could this be? 5 loaves, 2 fish, thousands of people. All ate as much as they wanted. When they were filled, Jesus spoke again.
Gather up the fragments that remained, so that nothing is lost.
His disciples moved through the crowd with baskets, picking up what was left. They found not scraps barely worth saving, but abundance. On that day, Jesus did more than solve a problem of hunger. He showed them a sign of who he was. He had once said, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled." Now he showed that in his hands, the little they had brought could be multiplied, stretched, broken, and shared until they were all satisfied. In time, he would tell them plainly, "I am the bread of life. He who comes to me shall never hunger. He who believes in me shall never thirst." But even before those words were spoken, the hillside that day preached his own sermon.
Do not labor for the food which perishes, but for the food which endures to an everlasting life.
On hillsides and in villages, by sermons and by signs, he was calling them, calling us, to trust the one who can feed both the body and the soul.
Abundi bashmaya, nathkadash shemak, tethi malkuthak.
The day had been long. Jesus had taught the crowds by sea, speaking in parables, healing the sick, answering questions, bearing the weight of their needs and their hopes. As evening came, the light over the Sea of Galilee faded from gold to deep blue. Then Jesus turned to his disciples.
Let us cross over to the other side.
They set him in a boat just as he was. No long preparations, no special ceremony. The lake was calm at first. The gentle slap of the waves against the wood. The air cooled. The sky deepened. And in the stern of the boat, on a cushion, Jesus lay and asleep. Then it came. Winds rushing down from the surrounding hillsides, turning still water into chaos. The waves began to grow. The wind roared. Spray flew over the sides of the boat. What had been peaceful became dangerous. The small vessel climbed the swell of one of the waves and dropped into the trough of another. Water crashed over the sides, filling the boat. Hands scrambled for buckets. Voices shouted in the dark. They were fishermen, many of them, no strangers in this lake, but even they felt the cold grip of fear. Through it all, in the stern, Jesus slept. Not because he didn't care, but because he was at rest. Fully human in weariness, yet fully trusting in his Father. At last, over the roar of the wind and the water, they cried out to him. They shook him awake. Their voices raged with fear. He rose to his feet in the heaving boat. The wind tore at his clothes. Spray hit his face. The sea pounded and raged around them. But in his eyes were clear, unshaken. He spoke first to them.
Why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith?
Then to the storm.
Peace, be still.
At his words, the wind began to die. The waves that had risen like wild beasts fell and smoothed. The only sounds left were the breaths of the men in the boat and the soft lap of a now gentle sea. They looked at him. with awe that was almost fear. Jesus stood among them, the one who sleeps in the storms, the one who speaks and silences them. Sometime later, another night found them on this same sea. Jesus sent his disciples ahead in the boat while he went to a mountainside to pray alone. The disciples rowed out into the middle of the lake. The wind rose against them. Not a violent storm this time, but a hard, resisting wind. They strained at the oars. Progress was slow. Their arms ached. Their minds grew tired. Jesus was not with them. At least, not in the way they could see. But he saw them. From the hillside in the darkness, he knew where they were, knew their struggle, knew the way the wind pushed them against and the way weariness pressed down inside their chests. In the final watch of the night, when the darkness is deepest and dawn is not far, he came to them, not in another boat, not from the shore. He came walking on water. The disciples saw a figure against the darkness, moving over the surface. Fear rose in them, a different kind of fear this time. They cried out, thinking they saw a ghost, but then his voice cut through the wind, familiar even in the strangeness of the moment.
Take courage. It is I. Do not be afraid.
Not, the wind is nothing. Not, the waves don't matter. But I am here. In the presence on the water was an answer in itself. He stepped into the boat with them. As soon as he did, the wind ceased. They looked at him, not sure whether to tremble or to rejoice. He had calmed the storm with a word. He had walked on what terrified them and joined them in a little frail boat. On quiet shores long after, stories were told. How he had seen them straining at the oars in the black hours before dawn and walked across the waves just to be with them. How his words, "Why are you afraid?" and "Take courage, it is I, do not be afraid," had sunk deeper than the fear that once ruled their hearts.
Abundi bashmaya, nathkadash shemak, tethi malkuthak, nehwe sefyanak, aikandi bashmaya, afbara.
In a village called Bethany, not far from Jerusalem, there lived 3 siblings, Martha, Mary, and their brother Lazarus. They were more than followers of Jesus. They were his friends. He had eaten at their table, rested under their roof, shared quiet conversations and simple meals. One day, Lazarus fell ill. Not a passing sickness, not something solved with rest and herbs, but a growing, heavy weakness that would not let him go. As his strength faded, his sisters did the only thing they knew to do. They sent for Jesus. A message went out in a haste, carrying a simple, weighted message. "Lord, the one you love is sick." The messenger found Jesus across the Jordan, where he had been teaching and ministering. Jesus heard the words, and he knew exactly who they meant. Lazarus, the one he loved.
This sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified through it.
Yet strangely, he did not leave immediately. He stayed there. He stayed where he was for 2 more days. Not because he didn't care, but because he knew he was about to do what would show his glory in a way they had never seen. After those days, he turned to his disciples.
Let us go to Judea again.
They knew the danger there, how some in Judea wanted to kill him, but the call of his friends' need and the purpose of the Father's plan could not be avoided. He spoke to them of Lazarus.
Our friend Lazarus sleeps, but I go, that I may wake him up.
They misunderstood, thinking of natural rest, so he told them plainly, Lazarus has died. Yet even in that, he spoke of belief, that this too would be for their fate. And so they went. By the time Jesus reached Bethany, Lazarus had been in a tomb for 4 days. 4 days of grief, 4 days of questions, 4 days of Martha, Mary replaying what might have happened only if Jesus had come sooner. Many had come from Jerusalem to comfort them. When news came that Jesus was near, Martha went out to meet him. "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Behind those words was both faith and pain. "I know whatever you ask of God, God will give you," Jesus answered her.
Your brother will rise again.
She spoke of the resurrection at the last day, a belief many held. But Jesus was pointing her to something greater, something nearer, something standing right in front of her.
I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he may die, he shall live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die.
He wasn't just promising a future event. He was declaring who he is. Resurrection. Life. Standing outside her village, speaking into her grief, Martha went to call Mary, who rose quickly and came to him. When Mary reached Jesus, she fell at his feet weeping, her words like Martha's but soaked in tears. "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." The mourners followed her, their own walls and sobs filling the air. Jesus saw Mary weeping, and the Jews who came with her weeping. He was deeply moved in spirit, troubled, not in confusion, but compassion. He asked them a simple question.
Tell me, where have you laid him?
"Come and see," they said. And as he walked them towards the tomb, the one whose life did something unexpected. Jesus wept. The tears of God fell onto the earth outside of a borrowed tomb. Not because he was powerless, not because he didn't know what he was about to do, but because he truly loved them and he truly shared their sorrow. The tomb was a cave, with a stone laid against its entrance. Jesus stood before it, face to face with the visible symbol of finality. He spoke.
Take away the stone.
There was a protest, a practical human objection. Lazarus had been dead for 4 days. Decay had begun. The smell would be terrible. But Jesus answered their fear with faith.
Did I not say to you that if you would believe, you would see the glory of God?
They moved the stone. The dark mouth of the tomb opened to the light of day. Jesus stood there between the grieving village and the shadowed cave of death. He lifted his eyes.
Father, I thank you that you have heard me, and I know that you always hear me. But because of the people who are standing by, I said this, that they may believe that you sent me.
He did not pray long. He did not plead or argue. He prayed in confidence, not hoping for a response, but thanking the Father for what he knew would be done. Then he turned his voice towards the darkness of the tomb. With a loud voice cutting through grief and silence and the weight of 4 days' death, he cried out,
Lazarus, arise.
The words echoed into the cave, into the place of cold stillness. For a heartbeat, nothing seemed to happen. Then there was movement. A figure appeared at the mouth of the tomb. Lazarus, his hands and feet bound with strips of linen, still dressed for death, yet standing alive. Breath had returned to lungs that had been still. Blood flowed again through veins that had been cooled. A heart that had been stopped beat once more. The impossible stood in front of them.
Loose him and let him go.
They rushed to unbind him, shaking hands, fumbling at the grave cloths, tears of mourning turning into tears of astonished joy. Lazarus, the brother they had buried, now embraced them, walking among them again. Many who saw what Jesus did believed in him, but this sign, like a torch in the night, also drew the attention of those who feared his growing influence. From that day on, plans were made against him, and even against Lazarus, living proof of his power over death. The raising of Lazarus was not a gift to one family, It was a declaration, a preview of what he himself would soon face and overcome.
Abundi bashmaya, nathkadash shemak, tethi malkuthak, nehwe sefyanak, aikandi bashmaya, afbara, lachman di sunkanan yamana, haflal yomadain.
Night lay heavy on Jerusalem. In a garden called Gethsemane, along twisted olive trees, Jesus had prayed in deep anguish. Sweat like drops of blood, heart pressed against the weight of what was coming. He had surrendered there. Not my will, but yours be done. From that moment, events moved quickly. A kiss from a betrayer, torches in the dark, chains on the wrists of one who had touched the sick with healing hands. He was taken, bound, questioned, accused, dragged from the house of the high priest to the governor's hall, from religious leaders to Roman power. False witnesses spoke. Crowds were stirred. Fear and anger and confusion swirled around him, yet in their noise, he remained strangely calm. Before Pilate, the Roman governor, he was questioned. "Are you the king of the Jews?" Pilate asked.
My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would fight. But now my kingdom is not from here.
He spoke of truth, of a kingdom not built by swords, of authority given from above. But fear and politics weighed the scales. The crowds were pressed to choose. "Crucify him!" rose the cry. And the sentence was given. They scourged him first. Leather strips weighted with bone and metal tore into his back until blood ran freely. A robe was thrown over his raw wounds, mockery disguised as clothing. They twisted thorns into a crown and pressed it into his head. "Hail, King of Jews!" They laughed, striking him, spitting on him. He bore it in silence. The maker of heaven and earth enduring the cruelty of his own creation. Then they let him out, placing upon his torn shoulders the heavy beam of the cross. Outside the city wall was a place called Golgotha, the place of the skull. Step after step, he walked the road of suffering. The weight of the wood and the weight of the mission both pressed down upon him, and at last, they reached the hill. On Golgotha, they laid the cross down. They stretched his arms along the wood. Iron nails were raised. The hammer fell. Once. Twice. Again. Through flesh and into wood, they pinned him. Hands and feet nailed into the instrument of execution. The cross was lifted upright and dropped into a socket in the ground. Pain shot through his body. Below him, soldiers cast lots of his garments, divided in mock. Above his head, they fastened a sign. "Jesus of Nazareth, the King of Jews." They meant it as a taunt. They did not know how true it was. Passers-by hurled insults, shaking their heads. "He saved others," they sneered. "He cannot save himself," religious leaders scoffed. Soldiers mocked. The air vibrated with cruelty and misunderstanding. And then, from the cross he spoke.
Abba, salacheton, anakru, mahumon, melanin.
Even as they nailed him, he offered mercy. At his feet some wept, those who loved him, watching helplessly. He saw his mother there, and the disciples he loved nearby. Even in agony, he cared for them. Hours passed. Pain burned in every nerve. Each breath was a struggle, pushing up against the nails just to fill his lungs. Yet the deepest weight was not the physical suffering, but the burden of sin. From about the 6th hour until the 9th hour, darkness covered the land. In the middle of the day, the light dimmed and failed, as if creation itself was grieving. On the cross, Jesus experienced a depth of aloneness we cannot fully fathom. The Holy One entering into the full horror of sins distant from God. Then in that darkness, he cried out with a loud voice,
Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani.
A line from the Psalms, yes, but not a performance. It was the cry of the one who had always known perfect communion with the Father, now feeling the wrenching cost of carrying our sin. He thirsted.
Samei anna.
They lifted a sponge soaked in sour wine to his lips on reed of hyssop. He spoke again.
Gebir.
Not I am finished, but it. The work, the mission, the payment, the plan of redemption, every prophecy fulfilled. Then one last time, he spoke to his Father.
Abba. Birka. Nathan.
He bowed his head and gave up his spirit. He was not robbed of life. He laid it down. On the hill of the skull, the crowds began to drift away, beating their chests, uneasy, uncertain. But the one of the central cross hung silent now. His body broken, his blood poured out. For sinners, for enemies, for us. A man named Joseph from Arimathea, a secret disciple, asked for his body. With Nicodemus, he took Jesus down from the cross. Tenderly, they wrapped him in linen with spices according to burial customs. Nearby, in a garden, there was a tomb cut into rock, one in which no one had ever been laid. They placed him there, rolled a great stone against the entrance, and left. The light of the world was laid in darkness. The author of life laid still in the silence of death. The one who had said, I am the good shepherd, I laid down my life for the sheep, had done exactly that. The cross stood empty now. The tombstone was sealed. The sky was clear again. But in heaven's view, something vast had already shifted. Sin's debt marked paid in full, the accuser's claim stripped of its power, a new covenant sealed in blood. The world saw a failed teacher, a dead man on a cross. Heaven saw the obedient Son finishing the work he came to do. Not the end of the story, but a turning point. A death that would make a way for resurrection. The darkest day holding within it the promise of an empty tomb.
Abun di bashmaya. Nathkadash shemak. Tethei malkuthak. Nehwe sefyanak. Aikan di bashmaya. Afbara. Lachman di sunkanan yamana. Havlan yomadain. Washbuklan. Chavine aikana. Daaf hanan shubukhan lachayvine. Ulo elan lanisiana. Lahain atziel lan min bisha. Amen.